Support WrestleTalk!
Welcome to a re-recorded reactive news. Yes, we were originally going to talk about how CM Punk's antics at the weekend and his antics along with the other AEW EVPs would maybe have big ramifications. It certainly has already had big ramifications for tonight's episode of AEW Dynamite. We were going to talk about what it could all mean, but what it could really mean is that he will no longer be with the company as of the end of today being Wednesday, the 7th of September. A new report from Sports Illustrated has come out, which pretty much says that either at the end of today, Punk will be suspended for quite a long time, or he will be released. Now, the report is, and then we can discuss it, is punishment for that backstage fight, Sports Illustrated has learned, will include suspensions for every person involved. The list of those receiving suspensions includes Omega, Matt, and Nick Jackson, Pat Buck, Christopher Daniels, Michael Nakazawa, and Brandon Cutler. Multiple sources have shared that Punk and Ace Steel will either be among those suspended or will no longer be with the company by the end of Wednesday. Punk met with Khan on Tuesday, so the two had an opportunity to discuss how that exit could be handled.
Doesn't sound like this is blowing over anytime soon.
No, and the way they phrased it, so to discuss how that exit could be handled, suggests to me as if it is a real possibility. They have literally discussed how it would work. Like, I guess they'd have to buy out his contract or pay, I don't know, what kind of, is there a sort of clause in his contract, a break clause? I don't know. But yeah, tomorrow, I don't know whether they announce it after Dynamite or before Dynamite, if they're going to announce it. I mean, does someone just come out and go, CM Punk's vacated the title, and that's why Jon Moxley's here?
Maybe. I have no idea, and it's all purely speculation until we see what happens on the show. I had been saying since this news started coming out on the weekend that maybe you can get away with CM Punk dropping the title to MJF at Grand Slam before any of the repercussions come out. Of course, that's pro wrestling.
Yeah.
That's not, hey, we gotta punish you right now, we gotta get the angle out of the way. But it is very much worth noting that CM Punk is the current reigning AEW World Champion. The top guy in the promotion. The top champion. And it's not just as simple as, oh, well, he's gone, here's a tournament for the new belt, which may be what they're forced to do.
Yeah.
But I would not be surprised if part of that conversation involved in some way, how can we do business before any of this happens, if it's going to happen?
Yeah. How can we make this look as good as possible while it being as bad as it possibly can be? I mean, it'd be like if Roman Reigns had a fight backstage and they were like, oh, we've got to get rid of him, but he's Roman Reigns. He's in the bloodline. He's our biggest star for the last 10 years. It's a really tricky situation. My money is on that he is going to be released.
Ooh.
Everything in me is pointing towards now that they've decided it's over. Punk's just decided he doesn't want to do this anymore.
Could well be. We should have an answer on this very soon, and we don't know what that answer is, but thankfully you can listen to what we think might happen with AEW Dynamite and what might happen with those involved in the WrestleTalk reactive news that we recorded earlier today. With this update now out of the way, here you go. Here's us.
Weird transition. Hello and welcome to the most disappointed reactive news of all time, I think. It's been a bit of a crazy week in the world of wrestling, and
Why? What's happening?
have you heard that D'Lo Brown has left Impact Wrestling?
That's crazy.
I know. And then he came out afterwards and just ragged on every single person, and then a big fight back. No, that was CM Punk.
Oh,
that
I
was
did hear about
Punk.
that.
Yeah. So if you missed it, CM Punk said some stuff, and then did a fight.
Yes.
And everyone's mad.
Yes.
But also, it means that nothing is happening on tonight's episode of Dynamite.
Looks that way.
We've got a trios match, I believe. We've got MJF doing a thing. We've got the Pure Championship match between Wheeler Yuta and Daniel Garcia. And that is it. And for like an episode of SmackDown, you'd be like, okay, they've announced 3 things. But for an episode of AEW Dynamite, this is very unusual because what they normally do is announce 19 things, and sometimes they don't have time for all of them. So all this CM Punk stuff has really thrown a bit of a spanner in the works because it means that all the stuff they had planned, presumably because AEW actually plans their shows ahead of time, it's probably unfair now because it seems like WWE does as well.
Triple H. WWE.
And so John Moxley and Chris Jericho have been pulled in to kind of, we don't know what yet, but presumably they'll be doing something. Probably in the fallout of both their matches, they'll cut 40-minute promos to fill the rest of the time. Who knows? Maybe it's a chance for other people who don't get a spotlight that often. Maybe the women will have more than one match. It's really thrown a wrench in all of the workings.
I don't know if it's like the most intriguing Dynamite that we've seen in a long time, but I mean, MJF comes out and has a microphone in his hand. I'm gonna listen.
Yeah, I mean, and then you've got we bring out the Acclaimed, have Matt Caster cut a rap on everything that's happened. With Jericho, maybe he tries to continue his feud with Bryan Danielson. I really don't know what's going to happen, and it's sort of interesting in that sense because, like I say, normally you know what's going to happen, or you can make a good guess what's going to happen. So now that AEW is in such a corner with all this stuff, it'll be interesting to see how they actually react, because this stuff doesn't happen all the time, but it has happened in WWE. And they've kind of had to deal with it. But this is the first time, really, other than when people have got COVID and stuff in the past, that AEW has been the company where everyone's like, oh, they're in trouble. In the perfect world, the match finishes, Punk goes to the back, does the media scrum, says, it was a really tough match. Obviously, I come back from my injury. Talks about the match. And that's it. What happens, as you've all seen, is that it comes backstage, goes to the media scrum, rags on everyone, but mainly the EVPs.
Not Adam Cole.
Not Adam Cole, because Adam Cole's great.
Sweetheart.
So he rags on the Bucks, and he rags on Kenny, sort of, and he rags on Hangman Page and Colt Cabana. Well, doesn't really rag on Colt Cabana. He just uses the Colt Cabana stuff as a sort of vehicle to get to everything else.
Oh, he really ragged on Colt Cabana. He went the hardest on Colt Cabana.
Did he?
He said that Colt Cabana shares a bank account with his mom and he couldn't sue him because of that.
Oh, well.
Not the nicest thing to say.
One of these guys missed that bit. But, so he really went in hard on Colt Cabana, is what my opinion is. In fact, I think he probably went the hardest in on Colt Cabana. But so he goes in hard on all these guys. Tony Khan sits there. Doesn't do anything, and I think that's one of the things that people have really focused on, is that Tony Khan sat there the entire time and just let this all happen. And I think that's part of the reason which some people seem to think it is a work. All of the reports coming out of everywhere are that it absolutely is not a work. Then Punk goes backstage. This is all what's been reported and alleged. And then some kind of fight happens. Who started it, we still don't know. There are reports from either side saying that Punk and Ace Steel were in their locker room, and then the door basically gets kicked down by the EVPs. Others that Punk just goes straight up to them and starts a fight. Punches have clearly been thrown. Ace Steel throws a chair, allegedly because his wife was also in the room, and he was very upset that she was kind of near to the action. He then bites Kenny Omega, allegedly. He then allegedly pulls Kenny Omega's hair. There's a sort of 6-minute pull-apart brawl backstage.
That's a long fight. There are mixed reports of either Matt or Nick Jackson getting knocked out. One of them getting hit in the eye. That would be Nick, yeah.
Yeah, CM Punk sustained some sort of triceps injury, although the lady says that was probably in the match. As I say, lots of suspensions, and the kind of general feeling backstage is there is a genuine possibility that CM Punk might be released or fired after all of this. And honestly, how can you blame Tony Khan for firing not just him, but any of them after this?
Tony Khan, for the first 2 to 3 years of this promotion, was going through everything for the first time. He was booking his first shows, he was learning TV, he was signing contracts, he was going through partners, making deals with other promotions, that sort of thing. He's learning all these things as he goes, because he's a first-time wrestling promoter.
Yeah.
He's a very smart one, has lots of experience, like, learning this sort of stuff beforehand and doing his research. But in terms of on-the-job experience, he was learning everything as he's going. So that's why when you hear about guys getting released or not having their contracts extended and they don't get a phone call and that sort of thing, I'm like, okay, well, he's learning that sort of thing for the first time as well. That's not to say that he's doing a good job with it, but it's also like, okay, well, you look at people in other companies and everything, and they have oodles and oodles of experience, years of experience with a company that's been around for so long to know how to do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So he's going through all of this for the first time, and now we're getting into, well, how do you deal with an unhappy locker room? And I don't think he's handled it very well, and that's very disappointing.
It is incredibly disappointing. It almost feels like he kind of had the first 2 years of AEW written down and planned for before we even started the company. Like, he was like, this is what I want, or maybe the first 3 years. And then the first 2 years went exactly to plan. And he was like, oh, great, this is easy. This is exactly what I wanted to happen. And then as soon as something didn't go to plan, he hasn't known what to do. There's been a lot of reports of backstage unhappiness, people leaving at the end of their contracts, not being like released, but leaving at the end of their contracts and going, do you know what, it was very frustrating because I was signed and given these kind of not promises, but I was sort of thought that I had at least been assured a level of TV time. And they haven't been getting it because, as usual, in all wrestling companies, there are the favorites and the people who get booked more. But with a company like AEW, where it was kind of the land of opportunity, like SmackDown used to be, I think a lot of people came in and thought, oh, fantastic, I'm going to get so much TV time. And like guys like Miro and guys like Malachi Black and other sort of former WWE guys who've come in and gone, oh, great, this is my chance to really show who I am. And then they immediately haven't been given that, or they were given it initially, and then slowly over time they've realized, oh, actually, I'm just another guy here. And they are upset, and they had that big talent meeting where some people were pleased by it, and others clearly weren't. And it feels like he's kind of putting band-aids over bullet wounds at the moment. And eventually, people are going to start to bleed out. And it's gonna be mayhem.
Well, I think that's kind of where we're at now. I think that's what we're seeing. I think obviously the report is that Malachi Black is stepping away from professional wrestling for the foreseeable future. And I don't want to speak on any of the conditions of that or why that might be, but there has been a lot of talk of him being unhappy with his role in AEW. And maybe if you just push one of the most talented wrestlers in the world and give him more than however many matches Malachi Black has had on TV, maybe that doesn't happen. I don't want to say that for sure or not, because obviously I'm not going to comment on anybody's personal issues or mental issues, because that's a very difficult situation and very human situation. But I feel like a lot of the things that are wrong with AEW right now could have been fixed ahead of time and really should have.
Yeah, Tony.
WWE, WWE, WWE. Thank you for watching this episode of the WrestleTalk Reactive News. I've been your Jam That Champion Tempest. That's been Randy Andy Datson, and that was wrestling.